Okay. We're going to satisfy your first request.
Cool. Thanks a lot, man.
And in what station do you love?
KROQ.
You're listening to 91 Reasons, a journey into the twisted landscape of pop culture. Keep your hands and arms inside the podcast at all times. And now, the voice, Jeff Tucker.
If you've been listening to this show at all, you know that I rarely talk about work. I try to keep 91 Reasons and my work separate, which is, it's crazy because I see so many people doing really good theme park related podcasts. And one of the perks of that is you get invited to all these amazing theme park events. And I should start a theme park podcast just so I can go to those amazing events, but also provide stellar content, of course. But on this show, though, we do try to keep it separate so that there's no conflict of interest and I'm not saying the wrong thing. But this week, it's an exception. I went to my boss at work and asked if I could do an episode like this, and he had no problem with it. So I want to thank him for allowing this. That's very cool. Check it out, man. I started at Knott's in 1994, and I worked that first haunt, and it was great because it was not anything like the Scary Farm you know today. It was just a couple of weekends with a few extra weekdays thrown in. I think it was about 12 nights, maybe. It didn't start till the second week of October. Like, it was a totally different mindset. The park was still owned by the family. It was still run the family way. And Haunt was just another event that we did. It was not this all-encompassing, because when I do Haunt now, it's my entire life for months on end. And, I'm like everybody that works in it. It takes over your entire existence. People work on Haunt year-round. I'm constantly coming up with stuff and writing it down and then working on projects. But that first year in 94, I was working in the Silver Dollar Saloon on Main Street there in Ghost Town. It's now a shooting gallery. I was selling drinks with a guy named Kurt. I'm not really sure what I was there for because Kurt could have handled it himself, except that he couldn't take a break without shutting the whole place down. So I was really there just to give the guy a break. But hey, I was relatively new there, and I was earning incentive tickets and incentive pins and a watch and a t-shirt and all that other stuff and free soda. So I didn't mind working it at all. And Kurt didn't need me there all night. The Monsters didn't want us there at all because the light spilled onto the street. I don't think the Silver Dollar had ever been opened before 94 on a haunt night. So the light spilled onto the street, and Monsters were coming in and yelling at us, "Turn the lights off, get out of here," because they own the streets. You'd never open it now. Not that you could. I mean, it's a shooting gallery, but spilling all that light just ruins the atmosphere, But I'm not sure what the reasoning was. Ghost Town was run at that time by a guy named Max Barlow, and Max pretty much did what he wanted, and he wanted it open, and he wanted Kurt there, and he wanted me to do breaks. But like I said, Kurt didn't need me, so I would wander off, and I went through some mazes, and I spent most of my time watching The Hanging. That's the big show in the square. And The Hanging started in the 70s as a witch hanging. The witches complained, so it turned into a gypsy hanging. The gypsies complained, so it morphed into a celebration roast of pop culture of that year. A guy named Tom worked on it for years and honing it and really created that version of the show. It would later be copied for Bill and Ted, and a lot of other theme parks would put on these pop culture reviews, but they all can trace it right back to Knott's and the show that Tom was doing. And in 94, watching that show, I was just, I was mesmerized. Like, it's a big production. and it features all these movie characters that I like. That was the year that the show opened on the roof of the Chow House, and it was Forrest Gump, and he was, then a giant feather would float across the crowd onto the stage, and then the show would start. And so I watched that, and the first thing I said was, I'm going to write that show one day. I'm going to get my shot at it, and I'm going to work on that show, The Hanging has always been, for me, like one of the top, it's the pinnacle of theme park writing, And I've worked on some amazing shows. I'm very proud of my work I did on Beach Blanket Beagle that just opened at Knott. It's fantastic. It might be the best show we've ever done in the Schultz Theater. It's fantastic. It's that good. I got to watch it yesterday, and I was just stunned at how amazing it is. A guy named KC directed it, and it's fantastic. But as far as Halloween goes, the big show was The Hanging. And so I put in my years at Knott's, and I got my first break writing for Camp Snoopy, some Snoopy shows. They announced it was an open call. Anybody that could write a show was able to write a show. So of course I turned in like 12. I was like, I'm getting a crack at this, right? And that sort of morphed into other opportunities. But this guy Tom had a lock on The Hanging for years, and he finally did his last show in '99. And then they brought in a new team to write it, Ken and Bill. Both amazing guys, maybe the funniest people I have ever worked with of all time, Just hysterically funny. And the show they did in 2000 was fantastic. It was an amped up version of the one that Tom had done with the X-Men and pot shots at Disney, and it was just really slick. And unfortunately, Bill moved away because he was a master piano player, just a genius on the piano. So Bill moved away, and that left a hole. So how I was approached was the head of entertainment at the time. He brought me in and he said, do you want to work on The Hanging? And before I could answer, because I was going to say yes, he said, just so you know, it's not any extra money, and we may not use any of your ideas. I said, yes, I still want to do it. I'm good. I don't mind. Because it was about the thrill of writing a show that big and putting something like that together, in your life. And it can change over time. But there's something to be said about doing a creative thing just to be creative. Just to get those juices flowing. Just to flex your creative muscle, Yeah, it's great to be paid a lot of money, but in the early years, I was just ecstatic that I was going to get a shot at working on this show. And The Hanging in 2001, it was called Some Assembly Required. It was about a marketing guy who wants to change The Hanging to appeal to tweeners. But it was wrapped around by a story straight out of Planet of the Apes. And there were so many moments in that show that I was just so proud of, because I had written notes down for years, like if I ever get a shot, we're going to do this and this and this and this, I finally got to put Jay and Silent Bob in the show because Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back had just come out. And we put the Crypt Keeper in. I mean, it was just a huge, almost 45-minute show. And I've been writing plays. I wrote plays in high school. We performed my plays in high school. I wrote and performed plays, produced them at the college level. And I'd done quite a few. But the funny thing I said was, the first night of the first hanging, the first show, more people saw my writing than had ever seen it up until that point. I mean, that's how big the crowds were. The train gates weren't up yet, so Calico Square was much bigger than it is today. I mean, Calico Square's gone now. It's been replaced with Calico Park. But Calico Square used to be massive. Now where the stage is, you can actually hold more people. So the Calico Mine stage is actually a huge improvement over what we used to have, both backstage and crowd-wise. But working on that first show was great. Like, I had this idea that characters would get tired and they would get a visit from the Washington Apple guy. There used to be this ad campaign where the Washington Apple guy rode across America on a scooter and he would give apples to people that were tired. And so that got put in the shows, and Jay and Silent Bob and a few others. I was like, oh, this is great, you know? And that year, 2001, I think we cut out more than we put in because we overwrote it just to make sure there was enough. And when we finally sat down and wrote a list of how many characters were in the show, it was staggering, you know? If you've ever seen The Hanging, it looks like there's a cast of 50, but I think there's only between 12 and 15 people. And it's up to the director, and that's Ken, to work his magic and make it look like there's more people. And it really is amazing. So that first year we got to use Freddy. We used Freddy in 2002. That was a fun year. I got to work on that. My big contribution was putting Winona Ryder in the show. She had just been arrested for shoplifting, so I got to put her in the show. And a lot of other little tiny fun moments. And then came 2003, and that's where, you know, for better or for worse, everything changed, you know. And the big change was we took a risk and did a show that was not an Old West hanging, but was a pirate show. It was a pirate hanging because Pirates of the Caribbean had come out, and it was so popular. So we did a whole pirate show with Captain Jack Swallows of the Rusty Trombone, and got away with a lot of stuff because upper management didn't understand slang, which was fantastic. You know, there were over 100,000 maps printed with the name of the show was The Hanging, Curse of the Black Pearl Necklace, which is hysterical if you get the joke, and it's kind of, you know, interesting if you don't. But we did that show, and the first weekend featured Freddy Krueger. And one of the things I wanted to do for that show was, again, this is all extra. You know, just extra to round out the show, to bring the audience in, and have some fun. And it doesn't matter, if it takes extra hours and all this other work. Like, the things I'm going to play were really complicated to put together. But everybody knew that by putting them in, the audience would benefit. And if the audience benefits, it's worth all that hard work. All those extra hours. You know, it's totally worth it. So I had this idea. There was this long-running Bud Light campaign it originally was called Real American Heroes. And it was just about regular guys, like, we salute you, Mr. Coffee Barista Guy. Now, after 9/11, heroes were not, you couldn't throw the word hero around like that. Heroes were first responders, police, fire, paramedics. So the campaign morphed into Real Men of Genius. Real Men of Genius. You know, we salute you, Mr. Giant Inflatable Gorilla Guy. You know, speaking of those things that are in front of car lots. So I went to Ken and I said, I've got this idea for Real Monsters of Genius, where we'll poke fun at the stuff that's at Scary Farm. I wrote a bunch. They loved them. Ken loved them. So everybody got excited about these, and Rob and the guys in the studio put together a drum track that was almost identical to the one in the commercial. More work than I could have done on. I don't know anything about music. Then Ken read the copy, the commercial itself, and this guy Adam did the background vocals, and everybody really worked together. And when these debuted in the Square, people went nuts for them. They were hysterical, and I wrote a whole bunch. I'd say I've got 10. It looks like here, and there was originally only 9, and then the second weekend we were told, for whatever reason, we were going to have to take Freddy Krueger out of the show. So Freddy Krueger, who we had been keeping in the limelight for years, suddenly was going to be in a new movie, Freddy vs. Jason. You know, that cinematic masterpiece. So we couldn't use him in the show anymore. So we pulled him from the show. That's the right thing to do. And we replaced him with this hook-handed pirate guy. But we all got upset because the show was flawless up until that point. And then we lost Freddy. So then I wrote another one expressing my disappointment, frustration, and anger at losing Freddy. But we'll get to that one at the end here. So right off the bat, I want to thank Ken for letting me play these. These are a lot of fun. Everybody worked hard on them. We're going to do 3 in a row here. I will play the Mr. Theme Park Caricature Artist, Mr. 3D Maze Glasses Salesman, and Mr. Giant End-of-the-Line Sign Holder. And it's all done out of love. I now present the first of the real Monsters of Genius.
Blood Lite presents Real Monsters of Genius.
Real Monsters of Genius.
Today we salute you, Mr. Theme Park Caricature Artist.
Mr. Theme Park Caricature Artist.
Art comes in many forms. For some it's painting or sculpture, but for most of us it's a grotesquely disfigured drawing of ourselves driving a dragster.
Kinda looks like me, yeah.
Who needs 10 years of art school to learn the human figure?
I don't need no school.
You prove that all you really need to know is big head, little body.
Looks like a pest dispenser.
Poo-pooing watercolor or acrylics, you work in the only medium that counts, marker.
Wow.
So crack open an ice-cold Blood Light, old theme park Picasso. You may never paint at the Sistine Chapel, but the long ride is old too.
Mr. Theme Park Caricature Artist.
Blood Light Beer and Hauser-Busch, Buena Park, California. Blood Light presents Real Monsters of Genius.
Real Monsters of Genius.
Today we salute you, Mr. 3D Maze Glasses Salesman.
Mr. 3D Maze Glasses Salesman.
While many would think that fake fog and blasting strobe lights would be more than enough to disorient us, you confound our senses even more with 3D glasses.
Can't see crappy in this place.
As if asking $50 wasn't enough to get into this place, you want us to pony up another sawbuck just to enjoy a maze.
More expensive than a rent fair.
You use them to make 3D objects seem, well, 3D.
Wow, it looks so real.
So crack open an ice-cold Blood Light, oh giver of the goggles, because paying extra for glasses makes us see one thing, red.
Mr. 3D Maze Glasses Salesman.
Blood Light Beer and Hauser-Busch, Buena Park, California. Blood Light presents Real Monsters of Genius.
Real Monsters of Genius.
Today we salute you, Mr. Giant End-of-the-Line Sign Holder.
Mr. Giant End-of-the-Line Sign Holder.
While others stand at the back of the line hoping to someday get to the front of the line, you plant yourself at the end and stay at the end.
Is this the end of the line?
You light the way forward by standing back, way back, with a giant orange sign.
Said, is this the end?
Your arms never tire. Your sign never droops. You can't. You've got a job to do. What is it? Showing us the beginning of the end.
End is not.
So crack open an ice-cold Blood Light, oh sergeant of the sign, because any whack job can carry a sign that says the end is near, but it takes a real man to do it and mean it.
Mr. Giant End-of-the-Line Sign Holder.
Blood Light Beer and Hauser-Busch, Buena Park, California.
Oh man, I love those. I never get tired of hearing them. They're hysterical. I have them on my iPod, and sometimes during shuffle they come up, and it just takes you back. It's funny, you smile, and you remember all the work that went into them and how much fun that was. So now this one is glow-in-the-dark necklace salesman, and I'm not sure when this was phased out, because up until the late 90s, every theme park had people walking around at night selling glow-in-the-dark necklaces. You know, they would bring them out of the tube, crack them, and then smack them against the tube and make them light up. And I think, if I had to guess, the proliferation of LED lights and smaller batteries meant that now light-up stuff could chase lights, different colored lights, lights with movement, and I think the glow-in-the-dark goo necklaces became so cheap that why would you spend $4 at a theme park when at the 99-cent store or the Target dollar section you can get 15 for $1? So they went out of vogue. But at the time of this show. I mean, this is 2003, so we still had glow-in-the-dark necklace salesmen. Maybe it was a few years after that they went out. It must have been. So here we go with we salute you, Mr. Glow-in-the-dark necklace salesman.
Blood Light presents Real Monsters of Genius.
Real monsters of genius.
Today we salute you, Mr. Glow-in-the-Dark necklace salesman.
Mr. Glow-in-the-dark necklace salesman.
There's a lot of things we can purchase from a walking vendor. Soda, popcorn, peanuts, but they all pale next to that tube of radioactive goo.
You light up the night.
You provide the only theme park souvenir that spends a glorious night around our neck, only to spend the next 6 months in our Kenmore freezers.
Get 'em for the chili.
Green, red, blue, it doesn't matter. If it lights up like a nuclear meltdown, we'll clamp it around our neck.
Wow.
So crack open an ice-cold Blood Light, old gnarly necklace guy, because when the going gets tough, the tough get glowing.
Glow-in-the-dark necklace salesman.
Blood Light beer and How's Your Bush, Buena Park, California.
Now, it wasn't just me that got in on the action. Rob wanted to write one of his own, and it's hysterical. This is another one of those things where it just went out of fashion. But for a while, this was a big deal at theme parks and airports and movie theaters, and that's the guy in the audience with a laser pointer. Remember laser pointers? They were such a problem during the early 2000s that every show that we did at Knott's included the disclaimer, please, okay, this is how dated it was. It was silence your pager and please no use of any laser pins. So Rob wrote a really funny one about laser pointers. And there's a reference in here to Lorenzo Lamas. And I have to explain that because it's so, like, in the moment. Lorenzo Lamas had a show on ABC called Are You Hot? Where a person would stand on a rotating turntable in skimpy clothes. And Lorenzo Lamas would use the laser pointer to point out their trouble spots. Yeah. Hopefully we've progressed past that. So here's Rob's guy in the audience with a laser pointer.
Blood Light presents Real Monsters of Genius.
Real monsters of genius.
Today we salute you, Mr. Guy in the audience with a laser pointer.
Mr. Guy with a laser pointer.
Pyrotechnics, fog machines, they're just tinker toys. Nothing enhances the theatrical experience more effectively than a squiggly pinpoint of light.
Like a mini lightsaber.
You have the guts to let your manhood bask in the glow of a tiny crimson limelight less than a centimeter in diameter.
So very, very tiny.
Tell me, Lorenzo lame ass, are you hot?
I don't think so.
So crack open an ice-cold Blood Light, oh loser of the laser, because if you don't put that damn thing away, someone will crack open your skull.
It's the guy with a laser pointer.
Blood Light beer and How's Your Bush, Buena Park, California.
We'll continue. This is a great one. This is my tribute to something that was invented at Knott's Scary Farm, and that's monsters sliding around on their knees. It's a fantastic scare. It was born and honed right on the streets of Ghost Town. So, of course, they need to get their own real Monsters of Genius. And that's Mr. Sliding on Your Knees Haunt Monster.
Blood Light presents Real Monsters of Genius.
Real monsters of genius.
Today we salute you, Mr. Sliding on Your Knees Haunt Monster.
Mr. Sliding on your knees, oh monster.
While lesser men carve jack-o'-lanterns or hang up tissue paper ghosts, you celebrate Halloween an entirely different way.
Oh, it's
You strap on waxed up knee pads and careen down a theme park thoroughfare. You spend hours working on your technique, crash into a trash can, not on your watch. Sideswipe a glow necklace salesman, not this Halloween. Sure, it's easy to put on a rubber mask and shake a can at someone, but it takes a real man to propel yourself at breakneck speeds directly at crotch level. I'm aiming for your private. So crack open an ice-cold Blood Light, oh Sultan of the Slide, because our night just isn't complete without you on your knees. It's the sliding on the knees of monster. Blood Light Beer and Anheuser-Busch, Winter Park, California.
Yeah, you know, our night isn't complete until you're on your knees. I love it. So continuing, now we have a tribute to the other monsters. This is the monster in a maze with a rubber mask. And there's another piece of equipment here that we don't use anymore. It's funny how times really do change. Because in this one, we make reference to a shaker can. And I don't think modern Scary Farm goers, you know, if you're not old like me, you don't know what a shaker can is. They used to give all the monsters these metal cans filled with nuts and bolts to shake it, guess. Very startling, great scare. Just it was gone. It was one of those things where we've moved past this. Mazes are about character and growth and environment, and the cans take you right out of it. But at the time, 2003, we were still using shaker cans. So here's my tribute to monsters with shaker cans.
Blood Light presents Real Monsters of Genius.
Real monsters of genius.
Today we salute you, Mr. Rubber Mask Monster with a shaker can.
Mr. Rubber Mask Monster with a shaker can.
You have the stamina to stand motionless for 10 minutes at a time in an overcrowded maze that moves at 5 feet per hour.
Feet again, I'm tired.
You rattle our nerves armed with a few meager pennies stashed inside a container of recyclable aluminum.
Shake it over.
Wielding your shaker can like a cattle prod, you create tiny stampedes that empty your maze faster than it takes to extinguish a bag of flaming poo from your porch on Halloween night.
Wow.
So crack open an ice-cold Blood Light, oh shaman of the shaker, because any monster can sit on his can, but it takes a real monster to shake it.
Rubber Mask Monster with a shaker can.
Blood Light Beer and Anheuser-Busch, Winter Park, California.
Okay, so again, funny how times change, right? This is a tribute to the security guard at the front who has to wave a magnetic paddle to see if you're carrying any contraband, right? This is 2003, so we had gates set up at the front, security guards. It's a whole process now to get in. But here's the thing. Now, this is used for day op too. The world has changed so much that now we have to do this whenever we're open. It used to be just Scary Farm, but now it's all the time. And that's just a reflection of the world that we live in. So let's check out this tribute to security guards.
Blood Light presents Real Monsters of Genius.
Real monsters of genius.
Today we salute you, Mr. Security Metal Detector Guy.
Mr. Security Metal Detector Guy.
Standing as the only thing between mankind and a deadly pair of nail clippers, you wield your beeping paddle like a frat boy on a pledge drive. Go ahead, mister. Wave that radioactive X-ray paddle down the arms, chest, legs, and oh yeah, don't forget the crotch.
Testicular cancer.
Like a treasure hunter at the beach, you search each and every crevice for metallic contraband.
Digging deep.
So crack open an ice-cold Blood Light, old metal detector guy, because while you may not find actual stolen goods, you still manage to get your hands on the family jewel.
Mr. Security Metal Detector Guy.
Blood Light Beer and Anheuser-Busch, Winter Park, California.
Okay, so now we're going to move into the hanging itself and poke fun right at ourselves. So this is a tribute to the hanging show spotlight operator, whose job it is to point that light at whatever you're supposed to be looking at. And what could be funnier than poking fun at the guy with a giant light? And I was a follow spot operator back at the Grand Dinner Theater. It's a cool, if you've got a new spotlight, it's great. The spotlight I had in 1980, 86, 87, was hotter than hell, and I had to wear special gloves to even run it. So here's my tribute to the hardest working guy on the lighting team, the actual spotlight operator. And they all work hard, not just him.
Blood Lite presents Real Monsters of Genius.
Real monsters of genius.
Today we salute you, Mr. Hanging Show Spotlight Operator.
Mr. Hanging Show Spotlight Operator.
In a stage show filled with ghouls and goblins just screaming for attention, you aimed your golden beam at the exact thing we should be looking at.
Look at me now.
Without you, we might miss the guy with the pirate sword in the middle of the stage screaming at the top of his lungs.
Shiver me timbers.
You prove that old saying, the guy with the brightest light wins. If there's one guy on stage, you'll be there to light him. If there are two guys on stage, you'll light them both.
Wow.
So crack open an ice-cold Blood Light, oh Lord of the Light. We can truly say that you indeed light up our lives.
Mr. Hanging Show Spotlight Operator.
Blood Light Beer and Anheuser-Busch, Buena Park, California.
Okay, so continuing with our poking fun at the hanging itself, here is one for the sound effects operator. And you can tell that it's from the first weekend of the show.
Blood Light presents Real Monsters of Genius.
Real monsters of genius.
Today we salute you, Mr. Hanging Show Sound Effects Operator.
Hanging Show Sound Effects Operator.
With the arsenal of sound effects at your fingertips, it's amazing how every one of them sounds just like the other.
I can tell the difference.
You spend hours deciding on just the right sound effect for each stunt. Freddy swipes at Britney Spears, glove swipe number 37. Freddy slashes at Eminem, glove swipe number 37.
Wow.
And just when you think the show can't possibly take on one more extra noise, you add the only one that counts. So crack open an ice-cold Blood Light, oh king of the keyboard, because the show just isn't ready to go on until you've got both hands on your organ.
Mr. Hanging Show Sound Effects Operator.
Blood Light Beer and Anheuser-Busch, Buena Park, California.
Yeah, that had Freddy in it. So after Freddy was removed, we had to record it again as a brand new Blood Light. So here's that brand new Blood Light after opening weekend.
Blood Light presents Real Monsters of Genius.
Real monsters of genius.
Today we salute you, Mr. Hanging Show Sound Effects Operator.
Hanging Show Sound Effects Operator.
With the arsenal of sound effects at your fingertips, it's amazing how every one of them sounds just like the other.
I can tell the difference.
You spend hours deciding on just the right sound effect for each stunt. A pirate swipes at Britney Spears, sound effect number 37. A pirate swipes at Eminem, sound effect number 37.
Wow.
And just when you think the show can't possibly take on one more extra noise, you add the only one that counts. So crack open an ice-cold Blood Light, oh king of the keyboard, because the show just isn't ready to go on until you've got both hands on your organ.
Mr. Hanging Show Sound Effects Operator.
Blood Light Beer and Anheuser-Busch, Buena Park, California.
Okay, so finally, I asked permission to write this one. I was angry. I was upset that we had lost Freddy Krueger. It was fun writing for him. I'd been a Nightmare on Elm Street fan since the first film. I used to dress as Freddy Krueger and go to high school. One of my high school costumes was I took a red sweater, spray painted green stripes on it, wore a fedora, and I actually had a Freddy Krueger glove made out of an aluminum can and steak knives. steak knives. I convinced my mom to fill out one of those credit card applications at the mall because they gave you a free set of steak knives. And I took those steak knives, I broke the handles off, and I attached them to my Freddy costume. Imagine if you walked into school today with that. Back then, teachers wanted their picture with me. Now I would have been arrested. So, I love Freddy Krueger. Always have. Robert Englund from Freddy Krueger, Nightmare on Elm Street, and V, and all the other movies he's done. Great, great actor. It was sad when he got taken from the show, and all of that sadness turned into rage, and all of that rage turned into creativity, and all of that creativity turned into this.
Blood Light presents Real Monsters of Genius.
Real monsters of genius.
Today we salute you, Mr. Prissy. Always wanted to be an actor but didn't quite have the guts, so I went to law school, Mr. Hollywood studio lawyer.
Mr. Whatever he just said.
Throw the book at a liquor store stick-up guy. Prosecute a few crack dealers. Mister. Because real men protect those who are really needy. The Hollywood Film Studios.
Gotta get a pound of flesh, yeah.
You work countless hours, preventing Halloween events from celebrating your third-rate film characters. Characters that you save for what really counts.
What is that?
Making crappy formulaic slasher films.
It was straight to video.
How dare a local theme park use your cardboard serial killer whose last home video release was on beta?
I remember beta.
So crack open an ice-cold Blood Light, old pussified prosecutor. But be careful. If you bend over, you're gonna find out the true meaning of the long arm of the law.
The high-powered Hollywood lawyer.
Blood Light Beer and Anheuser-Busch, Buena Park, California.
Once again, I just want to thank Ken at work for letting me play these. These are fantastic. It's a snapshot in time. It's one of those little tiny projects that I'm just so proud of. I think they're very cool. I even made a Blood Light container, a bottle of Blood Light. There's only one, and I gave it to Rick West. It was one of the first times I'd really met Rick West from Theme Park Adventure, and he loved the Blood Lights, and I love hanging out with Rick. He's a cool guy. I saw him yesterday at the park, and he probably doesn't even have it anymore. If he does, kudos to him, man. But I actually made a Blood Light label, put it on a bottle, and gave it to Rick as a tribute to all the work he had done on his website, TPA, Theme Park Adventure, in promoting Scary Farm. He was the first guy to do flow-throughs where you run a camera through a maze and document and keep a record of all of the Haunt and Scary Farm stuff. So if I had it to do all over again, I would do a Blood Light for Rick West and Theme Park Adventure. Today we salute you, Mr. Theme Park Blogger, Mr. Theme Park Website Guy. But there were a couple of Blood Lights that didn't make it to the recording studio. I wrote them too late and they never got recorded. Those were we salute you, Mr. $3 Rib Guy. We used to have a place in the park that sold ribs individually. So you could conceivably buy a $9 rib plate of just 3 ribs, no side and no drink. And it was, we salute you, Mr. $3 Rib Guy. Where else can you get a $9 plate with no side? And then the background guy would go, no drink neither. And then there was my favorite, which I was really bummed never made it to the recording studio. And that was, we salute you, Mr. I bring my infant child to haunt. And it was about people who bring strollers, And the big tagline was, nothing says I love you like a lifetime of therapy. So those were great. I had so much fun working on these. I mean, I can't believe it's been 15 years. Oh my gosh, where does the time go? It just goes. So hope you dug these Blood Lights. Thanks again to Ken for letting me play them. And all the hard work that Ken, Rob, and Adam actually did creating them in the studio and taking my scribblings and making them into something amazing. And the one Rob did is great. So kudos all around, guys. Thanks for tuning in. I am Jeff Tucker. This is the show. Would Blood Light do a we salute you Mr. Podcast Guy. I don't know. I don't know if I'm worthy of a Blood Light yet. Maybe someday. The show is 91 Reasons.
Thanks for listening to 91 Reasons. Please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes. Find us on Facebook. Is anyone even still listening?
New York City.
He wants to see what's there.
His name is Brantley Foster. He came to New York to make it on his own.
You're fired, kid. Sorry.
Mom, I'm doing great. New York is just like Kansas. Intensified.
Luckily, he didn't have to.
I need a job, Uncle Howard.
Around here, I'm Mr. Prescott.
I'm going to see that my husband gives you a leg up.
No, I'm going to make it to the top of myself.
They started him at the bottom,
Show the college puke the ropes and keep them out of my face.
but he had a secret way of starting at the top.
This is Carlton Whitfield. Carlton Whitfield?
Who's Carlton Whitfield? I didn't hire any Carlton Whitfield. There's something going on around here, Foster.
He was trying to stay one jump ahead of everyone else.
At the end of the second lap, you still got a comfortable lead.
When his uncle's wife got the jump on him,
Give me a break. What the hell happened?
He fainted.
that's when he met her.
Tonight? Booked. Tomorrow night? Booked. All right, but don't beg, okay? It's embarrassing.
They were a merger made in heaven.
That wasn't bad.
That's when everything else
Howard, please.
went to hell.
You're perfect, right?
I never slept with the boss.
No, you slept with the boss's wife.
Leave your mouth. No, but I'd like to beat that.
God. Oh, my God. The sexual revolution is over. Everybody out of bed.
It just goes to prove there's more than one way to make it.
Sorry, this car's full.
Michael J. Fox, The Secret of My Success.
Attention, ladies and gentlemen, your attention, please.
Clifford Skridlow never expected to be anything but a humble scholar, learned teacher, and leader of the academic community.
I don't need stimulants or drugs or alcohol or any of these things when I have a good book. The great masters, these are my intoxicants.
Then, one night, mild-mannered Professor Skridlow became Dr. Detroit.
Nothing can destroy the doctor.
Gallant crusader,
Step aside, right here. You'll eat my food. Beautiful.
courageous champion, and valiant avenger.
Now, Mom, if you want trouble, then you just keep coming up. Kill him! Woo! Get up off that thing. If you feel better, get up off that thing.
Get up off of that thing. If you feel better, get up off of that thing. Try to beat that pressure. Dr. Detroit.
Dan Aykroyd is Dr. Detroit.
Make an appointment to see the doctor.